Hello everybody, welcome to today's episode of House of Tallysha with me, Isabel Tallysha-Soares. For this episode we are in the wonderful gardens of the Palace of Morgado in Portugal, more precisely in Arruda dos Vinhos, and I am joined today with a great honor and privilege by two local authors, Paulo Pimentel and Catarina Gaspar. Together they have amongst them this immense production of literary standards, both poetry and prose, fiction, historical novels, short stories. This is an enchanted valley, and this is not the first episode that I bring to you authors of Arruda dos Vinhos. And it's a privilege to be here with them to talk about Paulo's most recent book, this historic novel, A Perdição de Dom Sancho, the tragedy of King Sancho, because perdição is very difficult to translate. And Paulo Pimentel has also written his first attempt at a historic novel, and a very good at that, with A Esmeralda do Rei, the Emerald of the King. And then Paulo and Catarina joined efforts to sort of compose and revisit the story in A Esmeralda do Rei into a poetic stance in that book of Esmeralda e o Rei, from which Catarina will be reading some poems to us later on. So spoiler alert, there will be poems today. And of course, other books by Paulo, Do Ventre da Terra and Maria Russa e Outros Contos. This is an award-winning short story book, and this is also another short story book. And in these books, Paulo was already composing some of the elements and of the characters that then he transported to his other books. And I'm telling you this because, without false pretense, I'm quite in the know of the literary output of both Catarina and Paulo, and that's why I'm so happy to be here with you and discussing their output. And Catarina also has this book, which I think has one of the most incredible titles that I know, which is Mulheres Azuis, Blue Women. And once I told Catarina why she wrote this book with this title, and she said that she wanted to emphasize the power of women and female power. And that's why the book, all the chapters in this book have female names and characters. The Mad Woman, Sarah, Clarissa, Rosa, Concha, Flor, Teresa, Barbara, Valentina. And so an amazing hymn to women power. And without further ado, a brief conversation with our authors today. Paulo, Catarina, thank you so much for being here. And I will start with you, Paulo. First of all, congratulations on this wonderful book that I have already devoured. And it's a historic novel. And it is set in the medieval period. Both his historical novels are set in the medieval period. Tell us a little bit what fascinates you with the medieval period, and why choosing King Sancho II and another King Sancho I as main characters.
Okay, first of all, Isabel, thank you very much for the invitation. It's a great pleasure and a great honor to be here with you in Tallysha, in the house of Tallysha channel. Well, why the medieval period? First of all, the medieval period is a period that always fascinated me, because it is somehow, in Portugal at least, the beginning of everything.
Yeah.
We started in the medieval period, and why those kings, those two kings, Sancho I and Sancho II? Well, Sancho I, because he was the son of our first king, of Alphonse the Conqueror, and he lived a little bit in the shadow of his father, but he was a very, very important king in our medieval history. He was the responsible for the occupying, the occupying territories of that his father conquered, and those territories were mostly inhabited because of him. And he is also known in Portuguese history as o povoador. I don't know the right word to translate these
The people placer
the people
or the
placer,
colonizer.
yeah.
Or
And there is a very nice curiosity about them because he had 19 children
wow.
by three different women, and some people joke with him because he did not only develop the places that his father conquered, but also because he had so many children,
All right.
and some of them were kings and queens. And the second Sancho was very, I think he was very mistreated by the Portuguese history. He lived a great tragedy, as you so well translated, because perdição is very difficult to translate in English. But his story really fascinated me, and as well his wife's history, because once upon a time when I was traveling through Spain, already fascinated by the history, by the story of this king and this queen, and I went to Najera monastery, where she has a graveyard, a beautiful Gothic tomb, and she had there the shield of Portugal,
All right. Yeah.
and that was.
The trigger of your curiosity.
Yeah, the lying statue was so beautiful because I was accustomed, I was used to in Portugal to listen that was a very ugly woman, that she was a witch, that she made a spell to the king in order to control him and in order to control Portugal. But when I started to read about her, more in Spanish documents, I found that she was not only a fascinating woman, but also she was very beautiful, very elegant, and mostly the documents that had been written in Portugal about her were somehow, how can I say, they were manipulated in order to create a different image of her. And well, they lived a beautiful love story, both of them, and that finished with a great tragedy because she was forced to leave Portugal, and he was also forced to leave Portugal, and he died in Toledo. And well, it's a beautiful story, and it's a beautiful love story. We have already one with Pedro and Inês de Castro, but this one is not less beautiful than the one from Inês and Pedro.
So in a way, you are rehabilitating these historical characters. So King Sancho and his queen.
Yeah.
And so, without giving away any spoilers, what basically is the plot to the story, the tragedy of Sancho II?
Okay, so this book has another name. When I finished to write it, the name of the book, the title of the book was the Way of Redemption, because well, it is a way. There are some characters that are important in the book, Sancho and his queen, but also Simão and Mercedes, who are very important in the plot. And Simão and the queen, they hated themselves from a long time, but at the end of their lives, they meet in Palencia, in the Castilian city of Palencia, and Simão visits the queen in order to ask for forgiveness. And she asks him where is he going to, and he's coming by feet from Santiago de Compostela to Toledo, where his king Sancho II is buried in the Cathedral of Toledo. I was there, and it was very, very moving. And well, they decide to make this way by foot together. And this way is a way of redemption, because by making this way, it is possible to visit the life of them both, the lives of Sancho II and the life of Messia, who was the queen, and at the end they are going to achieve the peace that they want to in their lives.
Yes.
And well, the way is the plot around which the whole story is written about.
Yes. So redemption in the end.
Redemption in the end.
And rehabilitate, historic
And
rehabilitation.
yeah, of course.
What is also very interesting is that you wrote the King's Emerald, Esmeralda do Rei, and when I was reading this story, the first time that I see something wow is when I find characters from this book making their way into here. So you take Esmeralda and she is a constant figure.
Yeah.
And in Esmeralda do Rei, you write mostly focused on the scenery of Arruda dos Vinhos, on this enchanted valley, which is the name that we give to the place where Arruda dos Vinhos is. Check for other episodes in House of Tallysha to discover more about how enchanting this valley is. So, what for your writing is the weight or the influence or the inspiration of this particular place that you transport to your novels?
Well, Arruda dos Vinhos is the place where I live, and it's a beautiful and very charming village, not far away from Lisbon. And it's a little corner of Portugal that is very worthwhile to visit. Lisbon was conquered by Alphonse I in 1147, and after that time, this village, which was an Islamic village, a Moorish village, Al-Huta, was occupied by English crusaders.
Wow.
Who had helped the king to conquer Lisbon. And he gave this territory to be inhabited, and as a reward for that help in the conquest of Lisbon. And in fact, the energy of this place for me is very special. This place has a lot of beautiful legends that date back to the time of Moorish occupation, and all those medieval vestiges that we can even nowadays find. It has a castle, an enchanted castle, a castle that the legend says was built by Moorish, and well, that's why I think that this is a very, very historical village, and mostly people don't know this kind of treasure that is hidden here, so very close to Lisbon, and so very much in the countryside, in this beautiful valley with its beautiful river. And that's why I think, and I know that a lot of very important episodes of Portuguese history took place here, and I think that's the minimum that I can make, is just to promote the maximum that I can this beautiful place and this historical place. Okay, and that's why. And I know that even some of the aspects that are written here about in those two novels, some of them took place here, because this was the first city in Portugal to be offered to the Order of St. James.
Oh, wow.
And in 1172, and those women who were the wives of the Crusaders that were fighting the Moorish troops in the southern bank of the river Tagus, they were here even in a monastery, and they were the first to develop agriculture, to develop the knowledge of the herbs, of the medicinal herbs, and that is a subject that always has fascinated me.
Wow.
So I think I had the ingredients to put this beautiful village in my novels.
And you pour out the love for Arruda in your writings.
Yes, I think I do. And there is something strange in my process of creating, is that I can easily travel to those times. I can imagine a scenery, I can imagine people in the surroundings, I can imagine a lot of things. And during those times of research and during the time that I am writing, I already live in those times too.
Yeah.
So it's a kind of a spell.
Yeah, so, and you
And
are transported.
it's a very interesting process, and that's why I like so much to write about medieval ages, because people used to say that medieval ages are the ages of darkness,
Yeah.
the ages, and I think that now we are living another age of darkness. If that one was the age of darkness, now we live another age of darkness with so many bad things that we are doing
Yeah, yeah.
for our planet and against each other. And I think, but I'm very fascinated to medieval times, because if the knowledge was hidden in monasteries and people didn't have access to knowledge, they had to believe in nature, in other things. And nowadays that we have so many access to so many things,
Yeah.
we are not better.
Yeah, yeah.
We have only developed ourselves from the point of view of technology, but as human beings we are the same, I think,
Yeah.
or even worse. Sorry.
No. You are talking a little bit about the creation process, and now you immerse yourself, and now you start inhabiting in another period because you already live in the setting of your own novels. And Arruda is also the birthplace of a towering figure for Portuguese poetry. And I am privileged that both Catarina and Paulo are experts in the poetry and in the person of Irene Lisboa. Irene Lisboa was a poet of the 20th century who was born here. And she is, of course, a monument of the Portuguese language of the 20th century. And in another episode, we were with Jorge Câmara and Cunha. Jorge Cunha, I'm sorry. It was because of your name. So with Jorge Cunha, who is also an expert on Irene Lisboa, and he told us a little bit about his knowledge and the influence that he gathered from her work. And I ask you, do you feel somehow inspired, or do you feel treading in the footsteps of Irene Lisboa?
Well, to be honest, I don't think so.
All right.
I love Irene Lisboa as a Portuguese preeminent poet of the 20th century, and well, fortunately we have a beautiful library with her name, Biblioteca Irene Lisboa, just behind us, where I work as a librarian. And well, I know her novels and I know her poetry, but I don't. I know, but I don't feel I am influenced by them.
Yeah.
Because Irene Lisboa, as far as I'm concerned, she was a little bit more realistic, and she was very original in her kind of literature. But I don't think I have her influence. Although I am it's a privilege to work in a library with her name, and I think it's a privilege for all those people who live here to have a name like hers associated to our land.
To our land, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Before we pass on and we move on to listen to Catarina's poems, there is this project that I have already talked a little bit, but I would like you to densify and complement, which is you have this novel, and then you and Catarina worked and reworked the novel in a poetic fashion.
Okay.
And you composed that book together, The Emerald and the King, A Esmeralda e o Rei. So what was the idea behind the project? Why did you two combine efforts?
Let me explain, because that is a very interesting curiosity, I think. Well, I was writing this book, the King's Emerald, and one of the ideas that I had, because I had made a great research on the life of Sancho I, and I knew that he had been once excommunicated by the Pope because he had a wise woman in his court who was his counselor. And she was a kind of not a witch, but she understood of astrology and all that, and that was very interesting to me because that was directly connected with the tradition of Arruda. And then I am Catarina is one of my best friends, and I was sharing with her the course of the story, and I was talking to her about this character that I was discovering, and this character had no name. But I knew that there was a stone, there is a precious stone that Alphonse I had, an emerald, and that emerald had a very interesting and long origin. It had belonged to a Moorish queen, the daughter from Al-Mutamid in Seville, and then after an Almoravid war in Seville, the city was destroyed. Al-Mutamid was arrested and he was taken to Morocco, and his daughter Zaida had to go to Toledo to the court of Alphonse VI, and she had this stone, this emerald.
All right.
And this emerald then went to Teresa, the daughter of Alphonse VI, Emperor of all Spain. And Teresa was the wife of Count Henry, the father of Henry the Conqueror of Portugal.
There you go.
And so that emerald and that ring always came together. And this story is also, this emerald is also very important in this story. But the character had no name. And Catarina told me, well, she's going to be Esmeralda.
So you are
So
the culprit.
she is the responsible for the name of the character. And at the same time I was writing, and Esmeralda was taking part of our family because we talked about her every day. I told Catarina every day what she was doing at the time, if she was in La Ruda, if she was in A Lisboa in Lisbon, if she was in Shelby, in Silves, and Catarina somehow she got inspired too. And she started to write poems without telling me.
Wow.
And at the end of the book, when the book was already written, the novel, Catarina showed me some of the poems she had written, all of them, and she told me, well, this is not worthwhile to do nothing with this, but I wrote some poems inspired in your Esmeralda.
Wow.
Which, who in fact was not my Esmeralda, it was our Esmeralda.
Of course.
And I was very fascinated and I was very focused on the interest of those poems. And by the time I showed them to the publisher, and the publisher told, why don't we make an original project, and we publish the novel, and at the same time we publish a book of poetry.
Wow.
So this book belongs, all of it, to Catarina. She is the author of this book of poetry, and I am the author of the historical novel.
The prose and fiction and the poetry.
Yeah,
All right.
and the friendship.
And of course, that's the most important. And with this, I think it's high time. But after this introduction to what comes next, we could hear some poems by Catarina that shaped the project that she and Paulo had of transforming this fictional prose, A Esmeralda do Rei, the King's Emerald, into a poetic endeavor. And by the way, those plums are not props. They are produced in a wonderful tree that Catarina has, and she is so generously sharing with us today. So Catarina, if you may, some poems of the Emerald and the King.
Arruda, podia ensinar o teu nome às aves para que alimentassem o céu, ou murmurar apenas rosários de bagos nos carreiros de verde afogueado. Podia acarrear nuvens de poejo e arruda e fazer chover flores sobre o andor da senhora, quando ao fim da tarde se passeia pelas pedras escolares. Podia revelar o sono profundo do gigante que teima em nanar na terra perfumada pelo sonho, ou então bendizer as mãos que curam com ervas de amor. Podia até conjurar as vozes que toldam o teu coração, porque têm medo de ficar cativas das margens do teu rio. Detalhes, apenas detalhes, minha mãe de leite. Bem sei que preferes velar teu nobre sangue de rainha, trajando alpercatas e fundilhos, trocando incensos por tomilho. Bem sei que olhas teus filhos com ternura e se rasgam em peito fialdades e devaneios, falas de atalhos e carreiros, de amoras silvestres, de perdão, porque teu abraço de serras vigilantes sabe das dores e do pranto. Podia falar de um rei curvado sobre o teu manto de perfumes, de um templo eterno onde os anjos nos esperam à chegada, dos cavaleiros e montadas matando sedes e saudades, nessa água de festa de vida tão sagrada, tão sofrida, da cal que adoça a luar à noite os desejos consentidos. Podia enfeitar com colares de buganvílias os números já cansados, que erguem tua história, teus sucessos e fracassos. Podia, minha mãe, aprender com teus bandos de andorinhas os regressos e a coragem, abrir as asas e voar.
Wow, so beautiful. And the poem titled Arruda, so the place where we are. Catarina?
Correm nas minhas veias gerações de mulheres, santas, sábias, rainhas, guerreiras, bruxas, fadas, desgraçadas. Saúdam-me todas as manhãs os espíritos do bem e do mal, encarnados nos gatos, nos toiros, nas aves ou nos lobos. Lambem-me as feridas que me mantêm viva, as chagas que me resgatam do abismo. Correm nas minhas veias sangues estranhos, do norte e do sul, da terra, do mar e até do céu. Falam-me as vozes das árvores, dos rios, das pedras. Confundem-me os meus olhos no acerto das cores. Correm nas minhas veias animais selvagens e o voo de todas as aves do firmamento.
Wow. Another poem that Catarina is choosing for us from her book on this project of The Emerald and the King.
Apetecia-me tanto, tanto abrir as asas e partir com as gaivotas. Embrulhar os gritos roucos na melodia das ondas. Mas sento-me calmamente nos braços da noite. Voltam a mim os momentos em que fomos grito. Guardo no céu da boca o sabor do verbo que não me dizes. Rasgarei o tempo se for preciso. Mas hoje não me apetece voar sozinha.
Well, and to understand and figure out why some of the poems that Catarina was reading have wings and the aspiration of flying and the flight, well, you have to read A Esmeralda do Rei, The King's Emerald by Paulo Pimentel. And I hope I can leave you some curiosity about some books, literature, fiction and prose and poetry that is made here in Arruda dos Vinhos by such wonderful authors that I am so privileged to be here with. Paulo and Catarina, thank you so much for joining us. It has been an incredible honor to be here with you and learning so much more about this land and about the people that shape the history of this region. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It was a great honor to be here.
No, my pleasure, my pleasure. As for me, I'm Isabel Tallysha-Soares. It's always a pleasure to get closer to you and show you some glimpses, some bits and tidbits of places and of people and of stories and history from Arruda dos Vinhos, from Portugal, surrounded by this wonderful garden in the Palace of Borgado and in the wonderful company of books and writers. It's always so wonderful to be here with you. You know, leave comments and suggestions, subscribe to the channel, and as for me, I will be waiting for you.